Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll get started shortly.
Recorded.
Hey, Kurt. Good morning.
Hello, Cannon.
Hello. I think we had to wait a couple of more minutes. I think folks are still joining.
Candon, would you like for me to share the slides, or would you like to?
Please go ahead and share the slides.
Okay.
Let's wait for a minute, probably 30 seconds, then we can get started.
Let's see. We currently have 17 participants.
So I think we can get started. So can we quickly go over the roll call and see who are the people here?
Yeah, let's see. So let me share this again. Okay, here's the Etherpad. Let's see. Cannon, you're here. Ben? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And Timo. I don't see Timo. Bernard. I don't see Bernard. Vodafone, we have. Don't see Ricardo. I also don't see. Trish. Okay. Intel, Kathy, or Sundar. I don't see either. Fabrizio. Also don't see. Erickson. We have Peter. No, okay. Casa, Eric. Jane.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Jane. And Daniel. I don't see. Or Mark Alexander. I don't see. Else we already have. Sandeep. Don't see. Orange we have. VMware we have. Aaron.
Yep, it's here.
Oh yes, I see. And Capgemini, do we have Sandeep or Sandeep?
Yes, I am online.
Yes. Okay. And F5, let's see. Sanjay. No. Avi. No. And Sebastian Kubernetes. I don't see. Okay. Did I miss anyone?
I think Timo's here now.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, joined late. Nokia.
Timo. Okay.
Yeah,
let's-
hi folks. I'm new. I haven't joined previously. I usually have a conflict, but I'm Vanessa Little. I'm from Interdynamic Systems. Some of you I've met previously when I was the TSC chair for open source Mano a few years ago.
Okay. Sorry, Vanessa, who were you with?
Interdynamics Systems. Yeah, but
Did I-
instead of CS, it's with an X.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, we're fancy like that.
There you go. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay. Yeah, and y'all, please feel free. I'm going to post this link one more time. Please feel free, as always, to jump in on the Etherpad, add yourself if I have missed you. And also, as we scroll down here, please feel free to jump in and help me make the minutes be very accurate. Okay, so let's get the agenda. And I'll jump back over on that. Okay. Okay, just a reminder that the antitrust policy applies to all meetings of the Linux Foundation. If you have any questions about that, about the policy, please reach out to me or consult your legal counsel. Okay. And yes, I guess you all know about the meeting information. We have switched to Zoom. As I said, the Etherpad, please feel free to jump in. I've posted the link in chat. For voting attendees, all you have to do is just put a plus next to your name. If you're not a voting attendee, please add yourself to the section below that. And please feel free to jump in and help me take meeting minutes. Okay. So this is the agenda for today. We will review election results, also the community document. We'll have a SIG update and then discuss events and then have open discussion. Any corrections or additions to the agenda?
I might suggest doing the events before I go because I can fill up whatever time is left.
Yes, I think I switched to that in the content, John. I think we could.
Yeah, but actually, I believe that is the case. Okay, yes. So yeah, we'll cover events first and then it's a good day. Okay, anything else?
Do we have a quorum today?
I was just gonna say, let me check that real fast.
I think a few people joined after that comments as well.
10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, we do have a quorum.
Okay, all right, fantastic.
Okay, so since we have a quorum, let me jump back over here. Yes, so before the meeting, I sent out the meeting minutes of the last meeting, August 18th meeting. I hope everyone had a chance to review those. And if there are no questions or comments about the last meeting minutes, can I get a motion for approval?
Yes, I call for a motion to approve it.
Second,
Sorry, who was that seconded?
Sanju. JU.
Okay. And so is there anyone who does not approve the minutes or needs to abstain? Okay, minutes are approved. And so let's go to the election results. Camden, would you like to discuss this?
You can go ahead and announce it.
Okay. As I posted here, the nominations ended on August 23rd. I have links here. The elections, we had single candidates and we also had 2 elections. And thank you everyone that voted. The TSC Vice Chair winner is Sana Tariq. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Also the SIG1 Network Architecture Chair. And for the SIG2 Automation Vice Chair, the winner is Tal Leron. And SIG3 Release Chair was also a single candidate, and that was Tina So. So congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations, Sana, Tal, and Tina. Really appreciate it. And I think, Sana, you got a 2 roles. So I think community will look forward for a good amount of contribution here. Really appreciate that. And
yeah,
Tal,
Chandan, I didn't realize that could happen. So I'm excited and looking forward to it.
Sure, fantastic. Appreciate that. And Tal, congratulations on your vice chair as well. And we are really looking forward to your contribution. And I think Tina, I'm not sure whether you're on the call. Congratulations for you as well. All right.
Thanks,
so,
everyone.
Sure. And let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So we had a discussion on last Thursday, and I think most of you have joined there. And it was a great discussion, and we went through section by section on this community document, and we reviewed it, a lot of comments, and I resolved all the comments. Do you mind actually, Kurt, opening this document?
Sure, 1 second.
Give everybody a quick overview.
Here we go. Oh, it opened it in a separate window. I don't believe I'm sharing that. 1 second.
We were able to see the document, what you opened up.
Oh, okay.
You can sort of put it in a full screen. You see that icon.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. So bottom line is that this document is actually really in a good shape right now. And as I mentioned that all the comments that we got as a community, I think we resolved those comments and the document is updated. But again, the original template came from the Linux Foundation format, and there should not be a great surprise on the structure of the document. But again, the charter defines like a bigger picture of this community, like the way any other Linux Foundation project works. And this community document is like further enumerates the process that is needed for us to work with the SIG groups, work with, like an nitty-gritty details of our process around the TSC, right? So that's what this document is about. So let's quickly scroll down code and let's go through the section for people who could not actually join. And so again, I'm pretty sure that all of you have read this document already. So it has a gating principle, structure of the community, then technical mission of Nephio, which has actually already been spelled out in the charter as well. Then it defines the SIG groups, and it defines the contributor, committers, and the details of, like the contributor and committers of the SIG group. Then it defines the SIG chair and vice chair, responsibilities, and the mechanism to elect them, and their period of elections and those details around it. Then it also talks about SIG operations and how the decision process has been done in the SIG group. Then we also have sections about the committers and how they would actually get, do code contribution into those SIG groups. And yeah, let's go down a little bit more. Then we also have life cycle on the SIG groups, and then we also defined what those SIG groups are, which has already been approved on August 4th by the TSC. So the 3 SIG groups: network architecture, automation, and the release. And then also it talks about the SIG group sub-project that the SIG group can actually create themselves, and they can manage it. Then we also talk about the release lifecycle of the Nephio itself. And this is primarily discussion around like, who brings up the details of the releases and how does it get approved by the TSC? How does the TSC ensures the quality of the releases and stuff like that? So that has been spelled out on this particular area. Once this document is approved, and I think we will work towards actually another level of checklist. Think of this as more of a detailed checklist that we will create as a further document by TSC. But right now, this document, like clearly articulates the different stages of proposals, different stages of, review and approval of the releases by the TSC. Then it also talks about communication between SIGs and the communication between SIG and TSC. And then the remaining section, especially the section number 4, it primarily talks about the steering committee, the TSC roles, and how many members, and those are also spelled in the charter. It is actually reflected again here. Then it goes into the detail of some of the functional roles of the chair, vice chair, and additional details around it. So with that, so if we go to the end of the document, so this is the last section of the document that primarily talks about the TSC. So in my opinion, this document is actually in a good shape, and it is ready for voting, given that we already had quite a bit of discussion, and we also gave the more than 15 days for people to do offline review and stuff. So with that, any other questions that we want to discuss before we go for a voting?
So Kandan, could I ask a question? Sundar here. I thought
Sure.
we were going to cover this notion of direct contributions to Nephio versus external contributions also count in this charter, right?
Yes, we did actually add a specific line. I think it is on the section. I can tell you where it is. So we did add it actually. So I did resolve
Okay.
that comment. So it has been added so it is going to.
Okay.
So the bottom line is that there is a line, a statement that clearly articulates that it is both the external and internal contribution, as long as it's relevant to the Nephio community.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other question or any other comment? Or anybody has any concern in actually going for a voting today? And I think we have a quorum, and this document is very much needed for us to move to the next step of the community. And again, if there are changes that we have to make in the future, but again, this is an evolving document in my opinion. So there may be some minor changes that we always may have to do it in the future, which is something we can do it. We can come up with a proposal, then TSC reviews it, and once TSC approves that, that change can be accommodated. And but I think this document is needed for us to move forward. So with that notion, any final question or any final concern before we call for voting? Okay, so given that nobody has any concern, I call for a motion to approve this community document. And once it is approved, it will take effect from today. So with that, can somebody second it?
I can
Sure, I
second.
second.
I think there are two people talked on it.
This Sandeep.
Thank you.
And who was the second?
Bin Yang.
Okay.
All right. So with that, let's go for voting. So I think we can call unanimous voting. Like if there are no concern by anyone, then we assume that this document is fully approved by the TSC. Final call, any objection, unless we will call this document as approved. Okay, so with that, no objection. I think we assume that everybody has voted yes. So this document is approved. And Kurt, I think I need your help to put this document into the wiki page.
Okay.
We can capture the content. I think we can sort of abandon this Google Doc and capture the content and put it into the wiki page itself, so that people can see it directly on the wiki page.
Okay.
All right. I really appreciate the guys for contributing to this. I think, thanks for joining, lost a few calls and providing your thought process, comments and stuff. I really appreciate it. I think this helped us to move to the next step from a community perspective. So with that, let's go to the next agenda. Again, this is a reminder for people. So there's a lot of great discussion happening on the SIG group as we discussed. So don't forget to join the SIG groups. So let's go to the slide number 12.
See, I think actually I did move these around. So we're going to move SIG update and so we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so the KubeCon, I think we already talked about it. Again, there is no co-located meeting space there. So we will try to, I think we created a page where who are actually visiting the KubeCon, like put your name in that wiki page. So we know that then we can try to set up like a small group of meeting and then probably a dinner together or lunch together so that we all can meet and handshake. But the one which is ONES Summit in November 15 and 16, as we mentioned that we're going to have a Nephio mini summit. Okay, so the focus of that summit is going to be primarily on the development for the release one. So there will be a lot of great discussion will happen there, right? So in terms of getting a discussion around the detailed use cases, detailed code, contributions, and many detail. And also we believe that like if there will be additional contribution from Google will be done during the time, so which would help us to get into the next level of discussion from the community, in addition to the code that we already have contributed. So I think with that in place, so we will actually work on the full agenda. And I think we would ask for people proposals and other areas that people want to bring in and actually discuss through the community. And I think especially the SIG group discussion will take like a major portion of this thing. So right now we got like off. That is what the Linux Foundation was proposing. And I think we are negotiating for both the 2 days, at least 1.5 days that we can have this co-located even. Okay. So Kurt, I don't know whether you have any update from yesterday regarding the securing for both the 2 days.
I have not heard back from LF events, but I have actually just set up a meeting. So hopefully we can get some of this nailed down.
Okay, fantastic. And
So sorry, I missed it. Where is this November meeting supposed to be?
This is actually in Detroit, right?
Detroit. Both October and November.
It's in Seattle.
No, November is in Seattle.
Right.
Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle.
Yeah, ONES is in Seattle, yeah. And the KubeCon is in Detroit, but that is as I mentioned that we don't have any official event there. From next to KubeCon, we will arrange like a co-located event, but at this time we didn't have enough time to go and arrange a co-located event in KubeCon. But we will have a co-located event. We're just trying to figure out the logistics on the ONE Summit in terms of the either it is off day or whole like 2 days. We will just, but definitely we will have a session there.
So Kandan, I'm trying to basically follow the news on the chat window as well, which says that on the KubeCon, we don't have a dedicated space, but there is some presentations which will happen around Nephio, correct?
So I think, John, you can talk on to it. I don't know whether our submission got selected on the KubeCon.
Yes, it did. So that's just a, that's just a presentation in the main session of I think just an overview of Nephio. So it won't be anything new to anybody in this community. It's more for the broader, or for people who haven't been involved in the community yet. But I think we can also, we're seeing what we can do to at least arrange some space where people can talk. Google will have, as a sponsor, we will have a room that if we book ahead of time, if it's not being used, that some of us can meet in there as well.
Correct. Heather, I was not planning on joining the KubeCon, but some of my friends were. So once I confirmed that there is a presentation on Nephio, I would at least recommend to them that they should come and listen to your presentation. That's why I was trying to confirm.
Yeah, sorry, it says Heather. I'm John Belameric. I don't know why it seems like.
Why
the
is
name-
your tag Heather? I was so confusing. I felt you're John.
Yeah, and Steve, it looks like somebody else has, Sanju has Steven's name. So I don't know what's happening with Zoom, but
Okay.
it seems to have mixed us all up.
It's extremely funny. Okay. And for the One Summit, Kandan, I did want to let you know that I am attending, and one of my presentation is accepted in Nephio. Not Nephio specifically. My talk was something around it, around standards and how the orchestration world has challenges and the web scale world has challenges. But I think we have a good opportunity to align on this Nephio messages as well on that. We'll sync up on that separately, I believe.
Sure. I think it's a good point. So this, there are two parts to it, right? One is like the main conference and having Nephio related conversation there. That is the one part. And I think that's where we have one presentation and then there's additional presentations. And you talked about, I'm pretty sure that other community members may have a different presentation as well.
Correct.
And in terms of this, the mini summit on the Nephio, this is a dedicated session for Nephio in which we will focus as a community on many of the aspects like release one planning, any community member discussion and presentations that they want to share, like the way we had it in Sunnyvale, right? So we had like a good 2-day session. Then we would be mostly birds of feathers sort of a discussion where SIG group discussion happens and mostly working towards the release one. What are the things that we need to discuss and the code contributions, code discussion, and all those things around the release one. I think we can use this 2 days to really make that happen. So the only gotcha here, as I mentioned, is that we got off day space of a room which can accommodate 50 plus people. And right now, I think we are trying to negotiate for 2 days worth of room that we can get it so that we can use that for the discussion. So either it is off 2 days is what we are trying to figure out, but the session will definitely happen in the ONE Summit.
Yeah,
I get it. It's like a breakout room idea. Go ahead, Pina.
Oh, sorry. I'm hosted the Kubernetes on Edge Day. I see there's a submission to talk about Nephio there. Because the announcement will be tomorrow. So I can't tell it's accepted or not yet, but pay attention to the announcement tomorrow, of course, is by the policy. If it is, then we'll have a Nephio talk there.
Sure, awesome.
Yeah, and also just a quick comment about in September, there was event, the Elf Edge Equino Summit, and there was a talk it will be given by Kendon, and it's hosted in the Google campus in Mountain View. Everybody is free to join. I put the link at the chat box.
Hi, may I ask to have that added to the slide so there's one place we can track all the meetings, if that's okay?
We can definitely do that. I think we will maintain that in a wiki page
Okay.
also for easy reference. So we can refer that.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So with that, let's go to the next item. The next item is that.
Kandan, one last thing. There were quite a few submissions to the One Summit related to Nephio that did not make it to the agenda. And the assumption was that these sessions might be moved to the co-located event. I know that there were no rejection notes sent to the submitters of those sessions because there was an assumption that there will be a co-located event and they might present there. So just follow up with the submitters, make sure they're not kind of left in purgatory or something.
Yeah, okay. That's a good point, Ronnie. Yeah.
So you can reach out to either me or Heather Kirksky for the list of all the submissions that didn't make it to the main agenda.
Okay, got it. So let's go to the slide number 13. So this is more of like a last meeting that we promised that we will repeat the demo and the presentation that John had on the SIG group. And so that every TSC member is aware of that initial demo that assembled many of the components and showcased what is that Nephio would look like, and further code would come in both from the community development as well as from additional Google contribution. But this is like initial view of like where we stand. So with that, John, why don't you take from here?
Yeah, before I jump into sort of talking over what I demoed, and I don't have the complete demo, but I'll be able to show pieces of it here, and there's a recording of the complete demo today. But on the other SIGs, so the network architecture SIG has met a couple of times. We talked about this demo, and there's great discussions going on there. I know a bunch of you who are here or have been involved in those, and coming, I think most likely today or in the next day or two will be a proposal for the specific user journeys that we'd like to sort of form the first light kind of 1.0 or first release of some sort of Nephio, and then that organization or that SIG will have to agree on it, but that will be a proposal at least. So we're making progress on that. Obviously, it's within the 5G core use case as we've talked about, but we need more details than that. So that's the update there. I don't know if Stephen or Tina wants to give an update on the SIG release. I believe there's been some progress around getting some access to some resources.
Yeah, so we connected with Lincoln from RF Edge, and he agreed to actually lend us the resources. So I'm in the middle of trying to set up, maybe putting up Kubernetes and see if the access are good. Once that is done, then we have it in a 3 weeks block. Every time we make a reservation, it's 3 weeks, so we can go with that initially. And then also we are contacting the Linux foundations to try to get our CI/CD pipeline going.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, then well, let's talk a little bit about so in SIG 2, in SIG automation, we've been having again some really good discussions. We demonstrated a sort of proof of concept, which I'll talk about now in a minute. And that was about 3 weeks ago. Now we're sort of evolving that, and over the next couple of weeks, we're trying to break that down. Like I said on the slide last time, working to identify the concrete components for delivery. We're making progress on that. It's it's an iterative process. So let's go into the. I think can I just display? How does it?
Yeah, let me stop sharing, and you can jump on here. Let's see. Yeah, see if you can share now.
All right. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Okay. Can you still hear me? Because sometimes I know Zoom.
Yeah, no, we can see and hear you fine.
Okay. Okay. Sometimes Zoom turns off my microphone when I share the screen. Okay, so let's go with this. All right. So let's talk about a little bit about this. It really is a proof of concept. Now, all of this code is out there on GitHub. There's a setup guide for how to set it up. I know a couple other folks in the community have gone through that guide and set it up. So it is all out there in the open. The idea here with this goal is to start to one, build the mental model for people of how we expect Nephio will work. Of course, it's also to get feedback on that, and look at this sort of package lifecycle and workflow. And when I say package, that means a bundle of configuration, which might represent a workload. It might represent an infrastructure component that's going to be, that configuration is going to be pushed to the cloud provider, or it might represent, like I said, a workload that's going to be pushed to a cluster to run on that cluster. It might also represent a configuration of that workload. The main thing is that that package, that bundle of configuration, is represented in using the Kubernetes resource model. So in each of those 3 swim lanes we've talked about in the past, we're at different levels of completeness of having that work in a Kubernetes environment. So workloads are standard Kubernetes things. We all understand how to do that. Kubernetes does it pretty well. Infrastructure is a little rougher. Google has a service called, or an open source product called KCC that allows you to use Kubernetes resources to instantiate infrastructure within Google Cloud. Amazon has one, I think it's called AWS Operators for Kubernetes, that does the equivalent. Azure has an equivalent thing. The level of completeness of each of those is, varies, but it's pretty good, right? It's good enough for many things. We also have Kubernetes-based management within the ecosystem of different parts of infrastructure like SRIOV, like at the node level. And so again, just to kind of zoom out, part of our goal with Nephio is to identify the gaps within the ecosystem where perhaps these pieces of ability to configure things through the Kubernetes resource model are missing and need to be filled. So that's part of our goal, so that we can achieve that sort of bigger vision of a single platform that manages all three of those swim lanes in a consistent manner. We as a community probably won't be able to solve all of those problems. We need to reach out to our upstream communities. We need to potentially eventually create new projects and communities that are scoped to some of those areas. But right now we're working on identifying those and building out a use case, a user journey, set of user journeys that we can actually complete with the existing levers we have to pull within those configuration areas. So this goal, all of that, the interesting thing is, to me, is that regardless of which swim lane we're in, we want to use the same methodologies and the same processes for managing the instantiation, the customization, the targeting to its eventual location, the approval and review. All the same mechanisms across all three of those swim lanes can be used. And we also want to ensure that during that process, we can use, humans can inject changes along that path, but also automations can do the same thing. So when I do this demonstration, or when I show you what we've done so far, we're talking only about the middle swim lane, more or less. We sort of, we're only talking about the middle swim lane. But the fact is that the methods and the techniques and even the code will be the same, regardless of which swim lane you're in. The swim lane is really just content for the engine to churn on. So what is the demonstration? So that's the first bullet there, right? I'm trying to demonstrate that this is the package lifecycle and workflow. The other thing I specifically will show is that we have a controller for that provisioning. So the idea is that this is an automation that's going to take a single source package, bundle of configuration, and is going to fan it out across a couple of clusters and customize it for each of those clusters based upon sort of contextual or demographic information about that cluster, based on metadata we've stored about that cluster. The fourth point it's trying to demonstrate is that is a sort of subtle point within that ingestion of within those changes it makes in a response to that metadata about the cluster. The point I try to make here is that the controller and the package, neither of them has to know anything about the other one. All they have to do is know something about a common interface, which is applicable across different controllers and is applicable across different packages. And this is important because often these orchestration type systems degenerate into orchestrators that specifically understand the details of a specific package and packages that specifically understand how they're going to be orchestrated. And you lose the repeatability of the process, you lose the consistency of the process, and you end up having to write a lot more code and do things in a lot more complicated ways than you should have to. And so we're sort of exploring how to tease apart some of these things so that we don't end up in that degenerate situation. Specifically, I'm not showing anything about infrastructure here, although Sandeep from ARNA, after we reviewed this, is kind of taking this and going to potentially extend it. I'm also not showing runtime changes via an operator, and I'll show a little more. Let's see, this is what I want to do next. What I mean by that. So this diagram shows a little bit of this package lifecycle. The idea here, let's see, did I have another slide? No. The idea here is the sort of personas involved, or the roles involved, are think of a vendor who sells some packaged software network function. They create a sort of best practices sort of configuration. What today they would publish a Helm chart. In our conception, they publish a package, which is effectively a set of configuration, but it doesn't have the scripting, templating pieces in it that the Helm chart would have. It works a little differently, which makes it amenable to the kind of manipulation we're going to do. They publish that. Maybe a cloud provider or maybe a customer of that vendor takes that package, clones it, makes changes to it, and then puts it in their private repository. So now we've got two levels of repository. Then a deployment engineer comes along, takes that, clones it, puts additional customizations in it that apply specifically to the deployment context that it's going to be in. And then they publish it to the deployment repository. So we have three different, in this conception here, we have three different levels of repository. We have a public catalog or a vendor catalog. We have a private catalog that's private to the organization and includes things like their company policies, their typical ways of doing things. They may say, we don't allow any containers to run as root. And so they implement policies in there, and that may require some changes to the upstream vendors, to the vendor's upstream package. So that's the private catalog. Might also integrate with, for example, if you've got a metrics system or you've got a particular logging system you use, you may need to integrate at that level. So then your deployment engineer doesn't need to do that, or your application engineer. You could have many layers or tiers in this process. In this demonstration, we're sort of talking about just three. The deployment engineer is really talking about, I'm deploying it in this particular cluster, and so I'm going to put in the specific values for that cluster. And in each of these steps, we can automate, particularly the last one we tend to want to automate. So, if a package goes through this.
John, sorry to interrupt you. Time check, there's only 15 more minutes left.
I understand. Thank you. So the important point I want to draw here is that all the way up in this top bar that we see, up until that point, everything we're doing is against configuration in storage. It's against configuration that doesn't actually affect the live state. And what that means is that any mistakes we make, any bugs there are, we have time to catch through validations, automated and human review processes, without having any operational impact. Once it gets to the deployment repo and it's approved and it's published, what happens is that the Git syncer, config sync in this case, but it could be like an Argo CD, the Git syncer pulls it out of Git, loads it into the Kubernetes API service. There's some additional opportunities to change it, and now it's runtime state. And then an operator, and part of the reason I wanted to talk about this whole flow is that an operator, in the terms most people think about them today, is a piece of software running in the edge cluster, the workload cluster, that manages that particular workload. everything that operator does, it's acting on the live state. And if there's a bug there or there's a mistake made there, it will impact service. And it will impact the operational, it'll impact service. So my contention, and I think others agree with me, I'm sure some don't, but my contention is that as much as possible, let's put things in that top bar. Let's put things in the bar where we're operating on more safely on configuration and storage rather than on runtime state. So all right. The setup, particularly mirroring that, is this idea of management cluster. The management cluster is where the UI lives. It's where this controller that I'm going to show lives. Tal actually did a great presentation last week, which is also recorded for SIG Automation, where he goes into depth about the difference between doing things in the management cluster versus doing things in the edge cluster. So if you're interested, I suggest you watch that. But what we have in this setup is a management cluster running a web UI, running a Nephio proof of concept controller. It's not a real controller. And we have this porch, which is a piece of infrastructure or southbound API that allows us to more easily manage Git. For each, we have one management cluster. We have then 3 other clusters, a regional cluster and 2 edge clusters. Every single cluster of these edge clusters, these workload clusters, has an associated repository. And just for simplicity, this is one-to-one. And basically anything that gets pushed into this repository gets loaded onto the cluster. All right, so there's a bunch of documents here, and we can put links to this in the agenda or whatever. Let's see, what do I have? Okay, so what does this actual demo do? We have a document describing some of the scenarios, but basically the idea is that we want to take a package. I started with a super simple application because the goal is to demonstrate the tooling and the workflows, not anything specific about the workload. We take it, we clone it, and we sort of fan it out across those clusters, and we customize it to each one. Like I said, in order to make that happen, we need 3 CRDs. We need a cluster CRD. This CRD effectively becomes a cluster registry. I think somebody used that term yesterday, that allows Nephio controllers to know what clusters are out there. We need some information about how to customize the package. In this particular case, I picked something called a cluster scale profile. It's just something I made up. It's sort of the job of SIG 1 to figure out what the right things are. This is just for demonstration purposes. The third CRD we need is I'm calling it package deployment in this, but effectively it's the targeting information. Which package do we target to which clusters? Finally, we have the controller that processes the package deployment, identifies the clusters to install the package. And I say install, but actually it's a controller. So the idea is it's a continuous day 2 reconciliation loop. It contains a package reference to identify which package to install, and then it performs the actual mutations based upon the context of the package. And finally, I need a kept function to actually interpret the cluster scale profile in the context of the package and perform different actions. Okay, so like I said, let me go out of the, okay. So that's kind of the description. What I unfortunately, like I said, I didn't have a chance to reset my entire environment, but I can at least talk through some of the pieces here. First, I can show you this UI. This is the porch UI. Really, Nephio is going to need to build its own UI. This is a sort of prototype UI. This is not it's a prototype of a prototype almost. But what we're showing here are those repositories that I talked about. There's one for the edge, or one for each edge cluster. And then there's a sort of catalog one. This is like that vendor upstream one. And then this would be the sort of private regional catalog. So looking at this, we have a set of packages, and we have, to show that sort of derivation chain of like starting with one package, we would go to like a private version of the package and then down to the deployment versions. I have this sort of very high level simple package. It contains just a deployment and a service and a config map. And then I have a derivation of that, which we can see is, well, here, we'll just, so what it does, I can compare that to the upstream. So what it does is it adds these couple of resources compared to the one we just looked at. So the one we looked at, very basic Kubernetes stateless service deployment, config map, a service. We've added our cluster scale profile. So the way that this works and the way we've teased apart this sort of interfaces is that the package contains a cluster scale profile. And that's a sort of way for it to advertise and say, I understand a cluster scale profile and I'm set up, in other words, I have this function implemented in a manner in which I can interpret that and scale myself appropriately. So in the particular case of this, this particular package, the way it interprets a cluster scale profile is if a particular value in the cluster scale profile is marked as low, so there's a low, medium, high, just for simplicity. If it's low, then I use one replica in my deployment, and I use these requests and limits. If it's medium, I use 3 replicas. If it's high density, I use 12 replicas. But the interesting thing is, as the author of the package, I know that my particular workload, giving it more CPU is useless at a certain point, because it can't take that individual process can't make use of more than that CPU, because there's another constraint, it floods the NIC. So instead of medium just doing vertical pod scaling, what medium does is does horizontal, going from medium to high is keeps the same vertical pod size, but increases the number of replicas. So the point I'm making here is that the controller wouldn't know that. The controller wouldn't know the appropriate way in which to scale a particular package, but the package does know that, or the package author does know that. Again, this is scaling done not at runtime. So Kubernetes offers things like horizontal pod autoscaler and vertical pod autoscaler. Those are done at runtime, and that's great in some environments, but in environments where you have a very, very fixed small size cluster, like in these edge environments, you may want to control your capacity more at configuration time rather than at runtime. And so this is one way to do that. So, okay, so that's our package. So what do our resources look like? So we have, like I said, we have 3 CRDs defined. There's the cluster one. It's very simple. Like, here's one cluster. This is the regional cluster defined. What does it have? It really just has labels to say I'm a regional cluster. That's the type. Here's what region I'm in, and it gives a reference to a scale profile, which I'll show you in a minute. And it gives a reference to the repository saying, this is the repository that you can use to add stuff to me. So this is our very simple cluster registry within Nephio. The edge cluster 1, will say site type. This is an aggregation cluster. It's also in the central region, and it's on the edge 1 site. It's a small fixed site. That's the scale profile. And finally, the edge 02 cluster is in the same region. It's also an aggregation site, but it's a medium fixed site. So the idea here is that now we've got a registry that tells us some ways in which we can select clusters. And I'll show you how we do that in a second. But first, the scale profile. the scale profile, you'll see like a small fixed site is saying there's 6 nodes. It doesn't auto scale, low site density. Whereas a medium has 12 nodes, also doesn't auto scale, medium site density. So there's just a sort of a little bit of metadata about the cluster. And our targeting one is this one. And what does it say? So this is really the heart of what the controller reads. The controller reads this and says, okay, I'm going to find any clusters in my registry that match these labels. So in this case, any clusters in the US Central 1 region that are aggregation clusters. And then I'm going to take this package from my upstream repository, and I'm going to fan it out and install it up. So essentially it's a selection mechanism. I select n clusters, and then for each cluster, I take this package and I install it. While I'm installing it, or really ensuring it, if we're talking about a controller and reconciliation loop, I'm back referencing into the cluster scale profile for that particular cluster I've selected, and I'm injecting it into the package, and then the package is reconfiguring itself based upon that contextual information about the cluster. All right, so I've already run the controller, so I'm not going to run that, but I can sort of show you the results. So in the results, what you see, so it's our Nephio packages, this was our upstream. Then we have, for example, this Edge 1 and Edge 2 clusters. So you can see one published package. Within that, you see that there's a package published that is based upon that scaled blueprint we looked at. And one thing you'll notice is, if you recall, the Edge 1 cluster was a small fixed site. So if we look at the deployment, we should see something's wrong because it should. Oh, I'm not looking at the right thing. I should be looking at, that was the I clicked on here, which is the upstream package. I should be clicking here, which shows the specific instance of this package. And what we'll see is that the deployment, I guess there's not a viewer. There's a the deployment replicas. Where is it? Oh, you know what? I didn't implement that. Now that I recall, the piece I implemented was the config map. Like I said, it's proof of concept code. In the config map, you'll see that we have. I didn't show you this earlier because I forgot that I hadn't implemented this. But the cache is set. The number of concurrent. Basically, the configuration it's sending to the application is the appropriate one for the low cluster scale profile, and then the one this is an easier way to see it. So comparing to the upstream package, what we see is that the key that represents the configuration of that particular workload matches the low version of that key. And then if we go to the other edge cluster, what we would see is that the key matches the medium version. So the medium version has a different size caches. Max concurrent is 2000. If we look at the actual key here, max concurrent is 2000. It was 1000. So the point is that we've customized the package based upon that contextual information, and neither the controller nor the package really had to understand that the other one's going to be doing that. So we're out of time. I mean, you can watch the video. I go into a little more detail. We also had a pretty good discussion yesterday in the ad hoc net automation meeting, a net architecture meeting rather, which is also on YouTube. So anyway, with that, I'll stop since we're already over time.
John, a quick question. The apply cluster scale profile and cluster scale profile, those are not relevant in the edge, right? I mean, those are pretty much inputs to the controller, right?
That's correct. And in fact, they don't get delivered to the edge. there's an annotation on here that says it's a local config. And so what actually gets delivered to the cluster, these get stripped out.
Okay, because I still see in the repository. So
yeah, they have to be in the repository, but they do get stripped out at, I guess, at apply time. I would have to look in exactly when that happens.
Okay, I'm assuming the API server will just neglect it or something like that will happen if it doesn't recognize those manifests.
Yeah, so I think the apply libraries, which are used will ignore. So this annotation, you see this config.kubernetes.io. This is a Kubernetes part of 6CLI's standard CLI utils lib, which is used by I think it's used by kubectl, but I'm not sure. It might only be used by customize and kept, but I'm not sure. We can look into that, but it should be not put onto the edge cluster because of this annotation.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys. Thank you, John. Thanks for the discussion today. And the additional detail will be on the documentation that John talks about, and also the recording of the full demo that we have done in the C group. So with that, thank you, everyone, and appreciate it, and looking forward to the next TSC.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.